السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أبنائي الطلاب وأعزائي الطلاب، أسعد الله مساءكم وصباحكم على حسب بقى بتشوف الفيديو إمتى، وكل خير وعافية يا رب إن شاء الله. المحاضرة اللي هنبتدي نشرحها النهاردة هي المحاضرة رقم 5. إحنا في الأسبوع السادس. أول أسبوع كان ريجستريشن طبعا، ويبقى ديت المحاضرة رقم 5 اللي هي في الأسبوع السادس. طبعا احنا امبارح كنا بنعمل الاساينمنت لما عملناه على الجوجل فورم، وقعدنا مع بعض وجاوبت على استفسارات حضراتكم يعني لحد الساعة 11:30 بالليل تقريبا. احنا من ساعة ما عملنا ابلود للجوجل فورم وحضراتكم شغالين، وعملت له ابديت من الساعة 7:30. انا قفلت اللينك الساعة 1:30 بالليل، كنت مع حضراتكم لإجابة كل استفساراتكم لحد الساعة 11:30 تقريبا، أو الساعة 12 إلا ربع. فوفقا للي شفته من بعض استفسارات حضراتكم ومن بعض إجابات حضراتكم للأسايمنت رقم 1 اللي هو كان متعلق ب two foreign representative offices operates in Egypt و two representative offices Egyptian representative offices that operates in the world. في لبس عند حضراتكم، عند البعض يعني مش عند الكل بصراحة، في الموضوع دوت. فعشان كده احنا النهارده ان شاء الله بالاضافه للتوبك الجديد اللي هنشرحه قبليها هنعيد شرح اغلب النقاط بتاعه المحاضره اللي فاتت. طيب خلينا نبتدي مع بعض دلوقتي بالمحاضره بتاعتنا. احنا حاليا شغالين في chapter 2 زي ما قلنا قبل كده، اللي هو الانترناشونال بانكينج evolution institutions and main operation. واتفقنا انه هذا الشابتر يحتوي على العديد من الموضوعات. The history behind international banking، وده موجود في الانترودكشن. Forms of international banking institutions، وده برضو اللي شرحناه المرة اللي فاتت، وهنعيد شرح هذه الموضوعات النهاردة برضو تاني. والموضوع الجديد بتاعنا بتاع النهاردة هو الفورين اكسشينج ماركتس. نتكلم عن الفورين اكسشينج ماركتس بنوع من أنواع التفصيل المفيد لينا في معرفة الانترناشونال بانكينج. طيب نبتدي مع بعض. As we mentioned last lecture, and we are going to re-explain it now again. What happened in the economy in the world that creates the importance of international banking? Here we are going to discuss the situation before World War II and after World War II. Before the end of World War II, businessmen used to conduct their trading transactions at a national scale. This was regarded to the high trade barriers imposed against any international trading transactions. We mentioned that countries and governments imposed tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers to control and to limit the international trading transactions. Because of that, there was no need for banks to provide many services related to international financial transactions. After World War II, there is a lot of changes that happened in the world that caused the increasing importance day after day and year after year for international banking. So what happened? The first thing and the most important thing we have to mention here is Bretton Woods Conference. Bretton Woods Conference held at New Hampshire, United States of America in July 1944 for more than 20 days. and it had a great results that affect significantly the world in different aspects. We have to mention here that there was three main pillars that affects the economic, political, and social relationship between countries. So the first result was articles of agreement to create the IMF, International Monetary Fund. International Monetary Fund main purpose was to promote stability of exchange rates and financial flows. And when we mention IMF, we have to also shed the light that many countries seeks to get a loan from IMF, not only for the amount of money, but also when IMF gives a loan to any country, this loan is kind of a certificate that this country economy is getting better. The economic situation in this country is getting better, and that will attract investors to invest. It will attract more FDI, and another good news for the economy if IMF gives a country a loan. Number two, there was articles of agreement to create the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, as we mentioned before, that IPRD, or International Bank for Reconstruction, main purpose was to speed reconstruction after the Second War and to enhance economic development, especially through lending to build infrastructure. So we mentioned till now two results of Bretton Woods Conference. Articles of agreement to create the IMF, whose main purpose is to promote stability of exchange rates and financial flows, and the articles of agreement to create the IPRD, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, whose main purpose to speed reconstruction after the Second World War and to enhance economic development, especially through lending to build infrastructure. We have to mention that later IPRD became World Bank. World Bank itself contains 5 institutions. One of them is the IPRD. Number 3, the third result, there was other recommendation for international economic cooperation. On top of them is the third pillar, the ITO, International Trade Organization, that didn't came into existence that time because of many reasons. Instead, a less ambitious general agreement on tariff and trade, GATT, it's known as GATT, was adopted in its place. In general, in 1995, the ITO came to existence. So, we mentioned here the 3 pillars of Bretton Woods. What also affects the economic, political, and social relationship between countries? Globalization and multinational companies and technological revolution. These variables affected significantly the need of commercial banks to develop more services and more products for international transactions. So these all variables drive financial liberalization, and banks now are in need for international financial services. So, from what we explained in the previous slides, we can say that international banking could be defined as a financial intermediation activity involving two or more countries or currencies. A financial intermediation activity involving two or more countries or currencies. Accordingly, the international bank would be charged with the responsibility of accepting deposits and giving loans, accepting deposits and giving loans in both foreign currencies and domestic currency, as well as providing international financial services, including buying and selling foreign currencies, providing hedging services, and derivatives tools. We explained before the commercial bank's functions. So here we have to say that international banks' main functions are the same functions of any other commercial banks, except the point of dealing in different currencies between two countries. So in international banks, they have products and services that makes them accept deposits. And we mentioned before that deposits has different types. For example, current deposit, saving deposit, on-demand deposit, deposit with period notification. And there are elements that determine the types of deposits. These elements are maturity, interest rate, obligations, and regulations on the contract and the liquidity level. These elements affect or is the main elements that determine the deposit types. For international banks, another element affect the deposit types. Yes, it's the foreign currency. So international banks' main functions are accepting deposits, and types is the types of deposits determined according to maturity, interest rate, obligations and regulation in the contract, liquidity level, and the foreign currency or the type of the currency, whether it's foreign or domestic. The second function of international banks is granting loans and advances. And in this function, as we mentioned in chapter 1, it means that the bank is in the process of creating money or creating credit using the required reserve ratio that central banks is responsible of. So here also in international banks grant loans and advances. It creates money or credit using also the triple R, the required reserve ratio. But here the international banks do these functions in both foreign currencies and domestic currencies. Other main functions for international banks are collecting dues and paying obligations on behalf of its clients, issuing securities and dealing in foreign currencies for its customers, issuing letters, sorry, issuing letters of guarantee and carrying out an investment trustee account for its clients and other main functions. So, what's the forms of international banking institutions? We have non-physical forms and physical forms. Non-physical forms and physical forms. Let's now explain again in detail the difference between these forms. Forms of international banking institutions, the physical form. We will start with physical forms. Before having a physical building in the host market, which will be attached with a huge capital cost, of course, the majority of banks used to rely on penetrating the host market through representative offices. What's the meaning of representative offices? Representative offices act as a market agent that just provide information about the home country to the customers in the host market. So to make this example more easier, let's suppose that National Bank of Egypt is going to open a representative office in UK. So when we speak about that the National Bank of Egypt representative office provide information about the home country, we mean by home country here is Egypt. The National Bank of Egypt representative office as a mark agent will provide information about the home country, which means Egypt, to the customers in the host market. The host market here is UK. Why National Bank of Egypt representative office do that? To try to attract these customers as being their main clients. So the agent, the representative office also has to arrange and handle meetings between the bank representative and the main businessmen in the host market to provide them with information about the financial services that could be offered through the bank. So the main aim of representative offices here is to attract more clients from the host market to deposit their money in the home country. Okay, so representative offices then don't perform any financial intermediation services or don't perform or provide any banking services like depositing or granting loans. It's only providing information. It's an intermediation between the host market and the home country. For example, we have here in Egypt different representative offices. For example, Sumitomo Mitsu Banking Corporation, European Investment Bank, JP Morgan Chase, and more. The other forms of international banking institutions, the physical forms, are foreign branches and foreign subsidiaries. What's the difference here between foreign branches and foreign subsidiaries? Foreign branches is operationally and legally acting as a part of the parent bank. Accordingly, the accounting system of the branch is part from that of the parent bank. So, for example, if we are having a foreign branch for any bank here in Egypt, for example, HSBC or other foreign bank, we are speaking about that the branch here in Egypt uses the same accounting system here in Egypt. The same accounting system that used in the parent bank is used also here in Egypt, in the Egyptian branch. Also maybe the managerial structure and so on. But also the rules applied in the home market would also be applied by the branch, even when operating in the host market. So the Egyptian HSBC bank here in Egypt, for example, will also apply any rules and is obligated to apply all the rules that applied here in the host market. So the Central Bank of Egypt, when it issuing Central Bank of Egypt, when it issuing any rules, also the foreign branch apply it. Another form of international banking institution, the physical form, is the subsidiary bank. Subsidiary bank is legally separated entity, but having the license and the permission to operate under the name of the home parent bank. The subsidiary bank would have a separated legal entity and would apply only the rules of the host market. So the difference here between subsidiary bank and foreign branch, foreign branches and foreign subsidiaries, that in foreign branch, the accounting system of the branch of the parent bank is applied here in the foreign branch. It's part of the parent bank, but the foreign subsidiary or the subsidiary bank is a separated entity. So the subsidiary bank or the foreign subsidiary is the closest form to a domestic bank in the host market, and thus could potentially have a higher capability for attracting more customers, because the customers here is familiar with the domestic banks, and naturally they are going to prefer dealing with foreign subsidiaries. They are for the customers more trusted to deal with than a foreign branch or a foreign bank. So a foreign subsidiary is near to be a domestic bank. This is why some banks seeks to open a subsidiary branch or a foreign subsidiary, because it has a separated local identity from their perspective, and it will attract more customers in this case. So the physical forms, representative offices, shortly it means the activity is limited to studying markets and investment possibilities by providing information about the home country to the customers in the host market. Why is that? To try to attract them to be their clients. These offices may not engage in any banking or commercial activity. Foreign branches, operationally and legally acting as a part of the parent bank, and it's also obligated to apply the rules that applied in the host market. Foreign subsidiaries is legally separated entity, but having the license and the permission to operate under the name of the home parent bank. It applies only the rules of the host market. and it's the closest form of domestic bank. These are the physical forms. What about the non-physical forms of international banking institutions? We have SWIFT and CHIPS. What's the meaning of SWIFT and CHIPS? First, we have to know that there is also a financial intermediation that could be provided at an international scale with low cost through relying on correspondent banking relationships. In correspondent banking relationships, we have two banks or more that going to deal with each other. So the two banks are to open a correspondent account for each other simultaneously with the aim of facilitating international payments and make it more easier. So in this case, internet-based means of communication would be utilized in such interbank transactions. In this case, we are speaking about the SWIFT and CHIPS systems. What's the meaning of SWIFT and CHIPS systems? SWIFT is the short for Society Worldwide International Financial Telecommunication and is used for describing the transaction regarding which account will be debit and which will be credit by how much amount. So in SWIFT, we are determining which account is debit, credit, and the amount of money. In CHIPS, is the short for Clearinghouse Interbank Payment System and is used for clearing the transaction and transferring the fund. So by using SWIFT and CHIPS, we are speaking about internet-based means of communication. And it occurs by opening a correspondent account for each other. The banks opens a correspondent account for each other simultaneously using internet-based means of communication, SWIFT and CHIPS. So we can summarize all the forms of international banking institutions into non-physical forms, SWIFT and CHIPS, physical forms, representative offices, foreign branches, and foreign subsidiaries. And we mentioned an example for representative offices, for foreign branches. We mentioned and used the HSBC example to understand it. And we can use one example about foreign subsidiary, but we are going to use an Egyptian example. National Bank of Egypt, UK Limited, is a wholly owned subsidiary of National Bank of Egypt. So there is a subsidiary, a foreign subsidiary in UK for National Bank of Egypt. National Bank of Egypt, UK Limited, commenced trading as an authorized institution in December 1992. It was set up in order to take over the operations of two London branches of NBE UK Limited that previously established in 1982. So in 1982, National Bank of Egypt open a foreign branches in London, 2 branches, and in 1992, National Bank of Egypt, UK Limited, get the license to open a subsidiary bank or a foreign subsidiary in UK. And till this point, we finished a revision, a detailed revision. We re-explained what we already explained in last week in lecture number 4. And I hope now you can know the difference between the physical forms and non-physical forms, and especially in physical forms between representative offices, foreign branches, and foreign subsidiaries. And during the lecture tomorrow in Google Classrooms, I hope you study this part and these points very well, because there will be a small quiz we are going to do in the lecture. You will have to answer small questions in the lectures in Google Classrooms. Now, before starting with the new topic for today, the rest of the lecture, you can take a rest for 5 minutes, drink a cup of tea, eat some snacks, and come back again to get the rest of the lecture. Now we are going to explain foreign exchange market. It's the market where foreign currencies are to be traded based on its price. Foreign exchange market is the market where foreign currencies are to be traded based on its price. So in foreign exchange market, we are here speaking about the currency, the foreign currency, and each currency has its price. And if the foreign currency has its price, simultaneously, we are speaking about that domestic currency also for each foreign currency has its price. So we are here speaking about the exchange rate. The exchange rate. Usually the exchange rate is defined as the price of 1 unit of the foreign currency valuated in terms of units of the domestic currency. So the exchange rate again is defined as the price of 1 unit of the foreign currency valuated in the terms of units of the domestic currency. This exchange rate could be determined based on different systems. We have 3 different systems: the fixed system, the free floating system, and the managed exchange rate system. Fixed system, free floating system, and managed exchange rate system. What's the difference between each system? In the fixed system, the exchange rate is determined by the monetary authority and is forced to be kept fixed during a certain period of time. In the fixed system, the exchange rate is determined by the monetary authority, is forced to be kept fixed during a certain period of time. Of course, this can support stability in international trade. Let's assume that for 1 month or 2 months or a specific period of time, the monetary authority determine the exchange rate of dollar. For example, $1 equals 7 Egyptian pounds. And this exchange rate is going to be determined for a certain period of time. For example, 2 or 3 months. In this case, these 3 months will have a stability in international trade. How the government determine the exchange rate in the fixed system? How the authority, the monetary authority, keep a fixed exchange rate? Through the government interventions in the market by using the official reserves. Here, we are speaking about the government when it uses the official reserves in the exchange market by buying and selling foreign currencies. The second system is the free floating system. The free floating system would enable the exchange rate to increase or decrease to any limits based on the supply and demand forces. So, in the free floating system, what determine the exchange rate is supply and demand forces. In the fixed system, what determines the exchange rate is the monetary authority. That's the first difference. And thus there will be no pressure imposed. We are going back again to the free floating system. In this case, when exchange rate determined by supply and demand forces, there will be no pressure imposed on the official reserves. So the government here in these two systems has two alternatives between keeping the international trade more stable but pressure or uses the official reserves in the fixed system, or they have the choice to impose no pressure at all on the official reserves in the free floating system, but that will cause the international trade and also another economic variables to fluctuate. So again, in the fixed system, monetary authority determine the exchange rate. In the free floating system, supply and demand forces determine the exchange rate. In the fixed system, there is a stability in international trade, but the government uses official reserves. There is a pressure imposed on the official reserves. In the free floating system, there is no pressure imposed on the official reserves, but at the same time, the international trade will fluctuate. The third system is the managed floating system. The managed floating system is in the midpoint between the previous systems. It would allow the exchange rate to fluctuate. So we are here speaking about an exchange rate that is free, kind of free to fluctuate. but within a certain border limit. Within a certain border limit. There is a ceiling and floor value for the exchange rate. Let's suppose, for example, that the government is going to limit the exchange rate for US dollars between 7 Egyptian pounds and 9 Egyptian pounds. So here, the forces of supply and demand, the forces of supply and demand will affect the exchange rate to increase and decrease between these prices, between these rates. So the exchange rate can increase up to 9 Egyptian pound per dollar and can decrease to 7 Egyptian pound per dollar, for example. But if the demand forces or the supply forces caused the exchange rate to be increased more than 9 or to be decreased lower than 7, here the monetary authority will use the official reserves to keep the exchange rate between 7 Egyptian pound and 9 Egyptian pound. So again, we have the fixed system, we have the free floating system, and the managed floating system. In managed floating system, both the monetary authority and the demand and supply forces are responsible for determining the exchange rate. The exchange rate can fluctuate, but within a certain border limit. There is a ceiling and floor value for the exchange rate. There is another terminologies that is important to be understand because they are used in the foreign exchange market or when we study foreign exchange market. These terminologies are depreciation or devaluation. Depreciation or devaluation reflects a decline in the value of certain currency. Depreciation or devaluation reflects a decline in the value of certain currency, while appreciation or overvaluation or revaluation reflect an increase in the value of certain currency. So we have depreciation or devaluation. It reflects a decline in the value of certain currency. Appreciation or overvaluation or revaluation that reflect an increase in the value of certain currency. Let's have different examples here to know more the difference between these terminologies. Given the definition of the exchange rate above, that's the exchange rate definition we used. Exchange rate is defined as the price of 1 unit of the foreign currency valuated in terms of units of the domestic currency. Using this definition, any increase in the exchange rate, any increase in the exchange rate would imply a depreciation or devaluation in the domestic currency, colored in blue, as you see. I colored it in blue. Any increase in the exchange rate it means, for example, the exchange rate of dollar increased from, for example, 18 Egyptian pound to 19 Egyptian pound. From 18 Egyptian pound to 19 Egyptian pound. In this case, there is a depreciation or devaluation in the domestic currency, in the Egyptian pound. And there is an appreciation or revaluation or overvaluation in the foreign currency, the dollar, the United States dollar. We can understand this more by using this example. When we mentioned that the exchange rate increased from 18 Egyptian pound per dollar to 19 Egyptian pound per dollar, this increase in the exchange rate causes a depreciation in the domestic currency and an appreciation in the foreign currency. We mentioned that appreciation means an increase in the value of certain currency. Here in the exchange rate, when exchange rate increases, the foreign currency has an appreciation, an increasing in its value. So when we say that exchange rate increases from 18 Egyptian pound per dollar to 19, if you want to buy a dollar, let's look at it from the other side. If you want to buy a dollar, previously you would pay 18 Egyptian pound. Now, when the exchange rate increases, how much do you pay? You pay more Egyptian pounds. You pay 19 instead of 18. You pay 19 Egyptian pound instead of 18. That means that the price of dollar increases. This is why we used the terminology appreciation or revaluation or overvaluation. I hope you understand the example now better. So when the exchange rate increases, there is an appreciation or revaluation or overvaluation in the foreign currency, the dollar, and a depreciation or devaluation in the domestic currency, the Egyptian pound. On the other hand, if there is a decrease in the exchange rate, let's reverse the example. Let's suppose that the exchange rate for dollars decreased from 19 Egyptian pound per dollar to 18 Egyptian pound per dollar. The exchange rate decreased from 19 Egyptian pound per dollar to 18. Some of you will say before me, and they already understand it. Yes, we are now having a depreciation or devaluation in the foreign currency, because before the decrease in the exchange rate, if you want to buy $1, you would pay 19 Egyptian pound. What happened after the decrease in the exchange rate? You can buy the same $1 with 18 by 18 Egyptian pound instead of 19. You can buy the same dollar with fewer Egyptian pound. You pay fewer Egyptian pound. Instead of paying 19, you are now paying 18. So there is a depreciation or devaluation in the foreign currency, and there is an appreciation or revaluation or overvaluation in the domestic currency. So I colored the depreciation or devaluation in blue and the appreciation or revaluation or overvaluation in red. I colored it that way so we can understand it better using the examples. So any increase in the exchange rate will cause a depreciation or devaluation in the domestic currency and an appreciation or revaluation or overvaluation in the foreign currency, and versus versa. Okay, another question here. Is there a difference between using the word depreciation or devaluation? Depreciation or devaluation? Is there a difference between these two words? Yes. Is there a difference between appreciation or revaluation or overvaluation? Yes. We use the word depreciation and appreciation in certain situations. We use depreciation and appreciation in certain situations and use the other words in other situations. We use appreciation and depreciation. I am still using the same color. The increase in price, appreciation, in red. The decrease in the price, depreciation, is blue. Okay, I'm using the same color. But we are using appreciation and depreciation when applying a free floating exchange rate system. When applying the free floating exchange rate system. And as we know minutes ago that in free floating exchange rate system, the exchange rate determined by what? Yes, by the demand and supply forces. So when the exchange rate increases or decreases in the free floating exchange rate system, when the exchange rate increases or decreases according to demand and supply forces, we use the terms appreciation and depreciation. But we use overvaluation and revaluation in red, devaluation in blue, in red, the increase in price, in blue, the decrease in price. We use these terms when applying the fixed exchange rate system. When applying the fixed exchange rate system, where the government forces the movement of the exchange rate regardless of supply and demand forces or pressures. So again, using these examples, please focus with me. This is the last point we are going to explain. Focus with me well. If the exchange rate increased from 18 Egyptian pound per dollar to 19 Egyptian pound per dollar, we mentioned this example minutes ago. If the exchange rate increased from 18 Egyptian pound per dollar to 19 Egyptian pound per dollar, we are speaking about a depreciation in the Egyptian pound and an appreciation in the dollar. What happened to the dollar? Its price increased. Instead of paying 18 Egyptian pound per dollar, we are now paying 19. Instead of paying 18, we are paying 19. The exchange rate increased. The value of the dollar increased. The price of the dollar increased. We have to pay more Egyptian pound. We have to pay more Egyptian pounds to buy the same dollar. Instead of paying 18 Egyptian pound, we are now paying 19. So we have an appreciation in the dollar and depreciation in the Egyptian pound. We use this terms, appreciation and depreciation, because the exchange rate increased due to having a deficit in the balance of payment. Due to having a deficit in the balance of payments. This means there is no intervention from the monetary authority. The change in exchange rate occurs occurred because of demand and supply forces. This is why we used appreciation and depreciation, because the exchange rate changes not because of the monetary authority, but because of demand and supply forces. Because we are having a deficit in the balance of payments. Let's now use another example. The other example here was in yen, but I change it again to dollars so we can understand it better. So on the other hand, if the exchange rate was reduced from 20 Egyptian pound per dollar to 18 Egyptian pound per dollar as a result of the decision of the Central Bank of Egypt. Here we have an intervention from the Central Bank of Egypt, the monetary authority. We have a decision from the Central Bank of Egypt that causes the exchange rate to be reduced from 20 Egyptian pound per dollar to 18 Egyptian pound per dollar. In this case, we are speaking about overvaluation or revaluation in the Egyptian pound and a devaluation in the dollar. So instead of paying $20, 20 Egyptian pound per dollar, we are now paying only 18. The value of the dollar decreases. The exchange rate reduced because of the Central Bank of Egypt intervention, because of the Central Bank of Egypt decision. The value of the dollar decreased. The price of the dollar decreased. So there is a devaluation in the dollar and an overvaluation or revaluation in the Egyptian pound. So again, let's summarize what we mentioned. When the exchange rate increases, or what will happen? when the exchange rate increases, we used these examples. Appreciation in red means the price of the currency increases. Depreciation, it means the price of the currency decreases. We use these terms when applying the free floating exchange rate system, when there is no intervention from the monetary authority, when the exchange rate is determined according to demand and supply forces. Overvaluation and revaluation in red, it means an increase in the price of the currency. Devaluation in blue means a decrease in the currency price or value. We use these terms in case of applying the fixed exchange rate system, when the government forces the movement of exchange rate, when the monetary authority uses different decisions to affect the exchange rate. We finished the lecture. أتمنى حضراتكم تكونوا فهمتوا، وزي ما اتفقنا دي محاضرة شاملة شرحنا فيها إعادة للمحاضرة الماضية عشان اللخبطة اللي حصلت، خاصة في الواجب بتاع أمس اللي سهرنا عليه من الساعة 7:30 للساعة 12 بالليل. نعمل له أبلودنج على الجوجل فورم، واللخبطة اللي حصلت ما بين التفرقة أو في التفرقة ما بين الريبريزنتيف أوفيسرز والفورين برانشز والفورين سبسايدريز، عشان في ناس من حضراتكم كتبوا ده. قعدنا الشرح مرة أخرى علشان نعرف الفرق ما بينهم، وهنجيب على استفسارات حضراتكم إن شاء الله في الكلاس روم، خاصة الناس اللي هم يعني ممكن هيبقوا شاكين إن هم كتبوا foreign branch or foreign subsidiary، يعني هيطلبوا مني إنه يعوضوا الدرجة إزاي أو كده. إحنا متفقين طبعا من أول يوم في المحاضرات إنه هيبقى في أحيانا كويزز عليها بونص مثلا أو حاجة نقدر نعوض بيه أي نقص ممكن يحصل في الدرجات في الأسايمنت أو في الميد تيرم وما إلى ذلك. فإحنا قعدنا شرح المحاضرة بتاعت المرة اللي فاتت كلها تقريبا، وشرحنا الموضوع الجديد بتاعنا بتاع النهاردة. موضوع ما فيهوش كم كبير، لكن هو ككيف مهم وفي شوية كده نقاط لازم نبقى فاهمينها. فكرة الابريشيشن والديبريشيشن والريفالويشن والاوفرفالويشن والحاجات دي، التفرقة ما بينهم، التفرقة ما بين الفري فلوتنج سيستم وما بين الفيكسد سيستم وما بين المانجد سيستم. الحاجات دي كلها أتمنى حضراتكم تذاكروها أول بأول. احنا في الأسبوع السادس، آخر ملاحظة محتاجة أقولها مهمة، احنا في الأسبوع السادس دي المحاضرة الخامسة. احنا يا ريت نذاكر أول بأول ونبتدي نذاكر الماتيريال القديمة بتاعت المحاضرات اللي فاتت، بتاعت الأسبوع الثاني والثالث والرابع، وخاصة الثالث والرابع. أوكي، وادي محاضرة الأسبوع السادس اهيت، وشرحنا كمان بتاعة اللي فاتت اللي هي الخامس. يبقى محاضرة الأسبوع الثالث والرابع اللي اتشرح فيها تشابتر 1 كله بالكامل، ومحاضرة الأسبوع الخامس والسادس، وإن شاء الله برضو اللي جاية السابع هنقفل فيها تشابتر 2، عشان إن شاء الله في الأسبوع الثامن هنعمل الميدتر. في الأسبوع الثامن الأسبوع بعد القادم هنعمل الميدتر إن شاء الله. فياريت تذاكروا كله، كل اللي فات، وتذاكروا أول بأول، وتذاكروا محاضرة النهاردة كويس. ولو في أي أسئلة تسألوني على الكلاس روم في الأوقات بتاعة المحاضرات اللي هتبقى نازلة لحضراتكم. وخالص تمنياتي بالتوفيق والنجاح لحضراتكم جميعا إن شاء الله. وهتواصل مع حضراتكم تاني أكيد بشأن موضوع الاتندنس في الكلاس روم إن شاء الله. خالص تحياتي ونشوفكم على خير. سلام عليكم.